This episode of Don't Bother Wearing Seatbelts is another throwback to one of our earliest episodes from before when Patrick even joined the fold. And it's now freed from behind a paywall, so you can now hear this talk for free, with most of the Ladybug Transistor going into detail on their iconic release, the Albemarle Sound. We hope you enjoy listening to this as much as we do revisiting such a great conversation. One of the more confusing elements to the Elephant 6 world is understanding that it was more than a music label, but in fact, a movement. The artists associated with the collective were spread across many genres, but all shared a love of late 60s psychedelia and experimental recording techniques. While many members of the Elephant 6 collective did have releases on the Elephant 6 recording company imprint, many, like this episode's guests, the Ladybug Transistor, did not. We'll mostly be talking about the band's third album, the Albemarle Sound, which remains a widely acclaimed Baroque indie pop masterpiece. Released in 1999 on Merge Records, it's receiving the 25th anniversary reissue treatment on the Athens, Georgia label Happy Birthday to Me, with the band touring late in 2024. Until you can get a chance to see this unique and amazing band in person, enjoy this conversation.
Mathew knows way more about all the different groups associated with Elephant 6, and me, for whatever reason, despite being in a similar age demographic, just for whatever reason, I missed a lot of sort of the Elephant 6 sort of affiliated sort of bands of the late 90s or early 2000s.
Well, there's a lot to rake through there, so you know.
Yes. And so this is kind of like geared towards people who, like me, may have had a casual interest before, but then are suddenly realizing, oh, I kind of messed up 25 years ago sleeping on this stuff. And like people who have been into it over the last 25 years, just getting a little sort of insider look at it. And so we're just kind of looking at various records that we think are good places to start with. And, you know, obviously, Ladybug Transistor is one of the big names that gets bandied about when talking about Elephant 6. This, because it's actually one of the few sort of albums with that association that I actually bought back in the day. And this record, shortly after I purchased it, was, I don't want to say stolen, but let's just say lost in a breakup with a girlfriend. And so it was really before I had any chance to really sort of spend a lot of time with the album. So re-listening the last week was a reminder of like what could have been.
Just a minute before the alarm, in the morning when I hear them talk, but it blew everything that you said. Your words passed through the wall. Knock 6 times in code, 6 times.
November 8th, so it's just after the election.
Oh, fun.
Oh,
Is-
yeah. So we'll
yeah.
see how happy we are
And then-
or how unhappy.
Right, and then this is perfect as the launch of the reissue the expanded edition November 8th, and then the tour early December.
The original pressing was a bit hard to get in the US. The myth is that the week it came out, it sold out, and we asked Merge if they would press any more, and they thought it would, to be on the safe side, that they wouldn't. But they also told us that the majority of the pressing went to Japan.
Really?
So it was maybe 70% of the copies went overseas, and then it was only available that first week on vinyl. And sure enough, I looked up on Discogs a few years ago, and the majority of the copies of the original version are all sitting in Japan on someone's shelf.
Wow. Okay.
Sell the Albemarle Sound. All the roads are closed. Set a course to break ground. Tempo, march slow. Meadow, port arch. Turf was so green. A painted post got you home. How the fields have grown as you start to notice the faintest shadow. Willow was drawn, there were no court arch, and the surf was so blue. Window was drawn, and the church has stood still.
It was divided up pretty evenly between the four principal songwriters were me and Jeff Barron and Jennifer and Sasha. And Jeff and Jennifer both played guitar and bass, so we'd switch around a bit there. And Sasha was doing all the keyboards and flute, singing main on one song and backing vocals, and there were songs that we all sang on. It was a partnership, plus our drummer San and Mike Barrett, who was also drumming with us at the same time.
Jeff
Oh,
played,
sorry.
I would say the majority of lead guitar is Jeff, and I was on bass. And then there are a few songs where we switched also for live. So that's reflected on the album. Or if I wrote a song on guitar, but that was for the majority of the instrumentation. And we all jumped in, lots of percussion. I remember we all jumped in and participated that way as well.
One of the things I was really curious about is just because you were kind enough to sort of forward some of the bonus tracks that come with the reissue, and listening to sort of the early demos of these, to me, I'm assuming they were like a 4-track demo or something like that.
Right.
But one of the things that really impresses me about this, and I actually hadn't really recalled from 25 years ago, is how very arranged. There are horns, there are guitars, there are drums, and it's like almost, I don't want to say it's exactly like Burt Bacharach, but it's a similar sort of approach where there's sort of like this, definitely this late 60s vibe of like, we are going to compose these songs and arrange them in such a way that we're getting the maximum out of them, which is really, I mean, to me is really impressive. I was just kind of curious about some of your process. I mean, just reading like random stuff here and there, reading that you guys all lived in a house together, and I don't know how accurate that is, how much of it is just sort of
the
press
Marlboro
statement or whatever.
Farms house,
But
I believe.
if you could just sort of talk about sort of your writing and arranging process just in general back around those times.
Well, I mean, actually, tell me if I'm wrong about this. I was about to speak for everybody, but maybe Jenny and Gary collaborated more on songwriting. But I know for myself, like mostly we it seemed like we present a fairly fleshed out, arranged song, and then everybody would contribute their parts. But maybe that wasn't true on every song. I'm just trying. I know that's sort of how I work, but now I'm trying to remember if for everybody else that was the case. But yeah, there's definitely like a level of precision in all our songs. Like for an Elephant Six sort of related.
You are
band.
not, yeah, your recordings are very, very tight, very, very orchestrated. And that is different from a lot of the Elephant Six stuff, for sure.
Yeah. It's like dense and it's lush and it's complex, but everything is very precise and very arranged and very thought out, like extremely thought out.
I think part of it, had to do our recording setup changed a bit. We had just gotten the new 1-inch 16-track machine, so that allowed us to have more tracks to play around with, and also, I guess a lot of what we were listening to at the time also informed it. Jeff and I both worked in record stores in downtown Manhattan, so we had this library of music available to us all the time, and it was sort of like the dawn of a lot of those CD reissues and box sets, and suddenly we were able to hear a lot about how it kind of demystified the process of how some of the 60s records were made, because you had these expansive editions with demos and instrumentals or alternate takes. And I think it definitely informed our process, like those Beach Boys sets or the Zombies and the Kinks records, and hearing string arrangements on things, and even listening to things like the Studio One ska compilations and the warmth of those recordings with the horns and everybody in one room. I don't know, BG string arrangements. It really inspired us to try to take it to the next level. Everything just kind of came together, I guess, with that. We're always inspired by a lot of stuff we'd hear. I remember driving across the country, we'd have a distant radio station and there'd be an oldie that we haven't heard before with a beautiful string line,
Right.
Discovering music that way. All those stations are gone now, but back then, you had all these regional oldie stations, and you'd hear different hits from the different regions you were at, and it was just so much fun discovering music and then trying to figure out how it was made back then.
Those CD reissues absolutely made a huge difference in that respect. I had the Beatles anthologies when I was a teenager in high school, and sure, I got to hear 32 versions of every song that they had. And you could hear the evolution, and yeah, absolutely, it teaches you so much about what it is that they did to achieve this.
I think your question really sums up so much of what this album was about. Like, it just in one question. We were even talking about it, the three of us, and it touches upon that process and how I think listening is learning. Like, you can learn your instrument and you can learn to be a musician through listening. And like Gary was talking about working in a record store, Jeff and Gary working in record stores. Well, also Jeff and I were raised by parents who, vinyl albums were our first choice. We were raised on 60s music. We were raised by like Woodstock generation parents. And we, as babies, we just sat and like stared at Pet Sounds, like figuring just being drawn to the album artwork. It being, Leonard Cohen, Neil Young, when we constantly had songs like that all around us. And so I think it just kind of gets into your DNA too. And I remember, like Gary was talking about touring in the van. You remember this was a time of, trading CDs and tapes. So when we were often touring with our friends who were often also Elephant Six bands, technically, I remember passing around cassette tapes. Like one had Os Mutantes on one side, and I think Corky's Debt to His Father, Mayo Thompson, which for me has like had been a life-changing album. And
Yeah.
Tante stuff, but like trading the tapes and like stopping at the rest stop, you know, and using the payphone or the flip phone and saying, here, you guys, here's some tapes, or switching places in each other's vans to listen to music. That was all, it was all a part of what we took in that by osmosis, and then took it back to the home studio and not influence. I mean, I think of it more as inspiration. Like Sasha was saying, some songs one person would bring the song, some would bring an instrumental, or like you would write the original demo on one instrument, and then if you were living together, the chemistry was there. I mean, you were living together too.
Yeah, we were in fact I think most of us were living under the same roof at the time, so we were really together 24/7. And I remember we had a piano, it's still there. I'm still living in the same house, like in the middle of the house, and that sort of became like the
Wait, you're still living at the Marlboro Farms?
I am, yep.
That's fantastic.
And the piano is still in the same place. But back then, yeah, that was like a gathering point for us. Like Jeff wrote a lot of songs on that. Sasha certainly wrote a lot of songs on that piano, and you hear it on some of those demos.
That piano was like a band member, basically. I mean,
it got him worked out. Yeah,
I feel like that album wouldn't exist without that piano.
And I think that house, the space, the warmth, the wood, the neighborhood, the instruments are all, that's how I approach music too. But I think exactly what Sasha said is that they're part of the band, they're part of the chemistry, and they're tactile. It's like, you know, I remember for the next album doing like not prepared piano, but doing different things to the instruments, the amps. It's so tactile. They're like living creatures, are a part of the furniture. It's very, very different than working on music on your laptop. It's so different, and it's so visceral. And when when we started going through like the bonus tracks, I have old 4 tracks. Sasha does, Gary, everyone has different versions of things, and we were able to collect them together. But it's almost like an out-of-body experience sometimes, because you're listening to stuff you did, you know, it was a long time ago. We were young, but I felt the same. Like the songs are there. Like the songs are there, even if it's a really stripped down, minimal version of it. I love hearing that part of the process, and how I love hearing the development of the songs, and how our brains, it's like you're seeing how our brains were working. And like, even if we presented the song, we knew that other people would contribute. We would work with Joe McGinty on arranging strings. They would come to life during the live shows and the tours, where they really started to gel. And you can hear that evolution.
You know, reflecting on the whole process and the album, and like we went into it with like a certain level of naivete, just given like our youth, and like probably the first time for any of us like writing songs in that style, or writing songs at all, you know, just like a freshness and a naivete that I think went into that record that could almost like never be repeated. You know, it was such a product of the time and the place and where we all were in our lives and our age. And it was just like such a special time that can't really ever be repeated so precisely, you know? And we, of course, like learned so much about the recording process and songwriting, collaboration, and the whole thing and the process, you know, and made great records after that as well. But there's just something, I think that's why people responded so strongly to Albemarle Sound, because like that, you know, comes through on some level, whether you want to call it that or not.
So slow, and we sail to the sound, and you may not see them, you wouldn't know them right away. Today knows that you swell all around me. What it means, what it leads to,
a lot of the instrumentation and arrangement is stuff that maybe you associate with a band that isn't on like their second or third or fourth release. And you guys just right out of the gate were you were composing in such a way that it would require all this other instrumentation, which is, it just is really striking to me. I think it does speak to maybe the physical locations you were in, the vibe, but you were all living in at the time. But just from the start, I mean, that seems to be the arrangement facet of it all seems to be a heavy component of it. And that's not something that I would normally associate with a young indie band.
Yeah, I know, at least like in my songwriting process, there was, and it was not a conscious choice at all, but just the way it would come out is that it wasn't always like verse chorus bridge verse chorus, but it, like there was just like weirdness that came out, like in terms of the arrangements and the structure of the songs that weren't totally typical, like a odd part comes in here, and I think we were all sort of writing a little bit in that vein to some extent, so it's like the actual structures of the songs were a little more unusual than you might expect. And that wasn't necessarily intentional. I think it's just, that's how the song sort of popped out. But I thought that was, I like that about our songs.
Oh, absolutely. No,
Gary, you probably have a lot to say about this too.
Go right ahead, Jenny.
Well, I just agree with what Sasha said. Also, the uniqueness of having 4 songwriters, on one album, and also collaborative songs as well, and a cover. The way the chemistry, you look at the sequence, for example, it's challenging to bring together songs, even if they're written in partial states of completion by multiple songwriters. 2, yes, is quite often collaborations, yes, but I think there's something that, to add to what Sasha was saying, where we were interested in arrangements, orchestration, instrumentation, but also like time signatures changing, and like maybe some a little bit more off kilter stuff with stuff Sasha and Gary and I were doing, but then Jeff fits in with his songwriting, and it just, I mean, we had to think really hard about the sequence too, but it just, a lot of it is just this chemistry where it gels together sonically. And I mean, I know from my interest, like, because I'm not a singer like Gary and Sasha are, I can sing backups, sure, I love singing backups during if I'm in the right mood, but I love little sounds and songs. Like I'll listen to like old 60s songs, Crimson and Clover, whatever it is, some famous song, and I'll be focusing on like some tiny little guitar part or some clave part or something, because that's what interests me as a music maker, especially more as I'm doing, my own album, as I've done my own album recently. But I love every little, and I think that we have, if you guys can agree or chime in, but like there's this respect for like San's contribution, like everything that someone did and added, string part, is part of this, is part of the communication of the whole song, and everything has integrity and everything, respect for it, and it really matters how something fades in or out. All these little parts coming together, not screaming like take priority over something else. That's something that I like about this album.
Well, you give every piece is given room to breathe on this album. It's every bit of it feels important and necessary and considered and beautiful.
Yeah, we learned that a lot too with our drummer San at the time. He was just a completely different player than we had ever played with, and he was on board. He started touring with us after we put out the previous album, Beverly Autumnal. And he taught us so much about dynamic and breath, letting the song breathe and playing a little bit behind the beat. He was just wonderful to watch as a drummer. He was really unlike anyone else in New York at the time, who mostly just dudes who bashed away. And then I remember Jenny and I ran into San playing a show with his other band at the time, and we didn't know anyone who played like that. He was a bit like he would hate it if you say he played like a jazz drummer, but he just had that touch.
He's capable of subtlety.
Yeah, and at the time he didn't have a floor tom. He kind of prided himself on only having a kick and a snare and the most beautiful cymbals that he had gotten from a factory in Switzerland or something like that. It was controversial when we made him play a few toms on the record.
He didn't want to do it, huh?
But he was also very up for experimenting, and the song like 6 times we did we recorded in parts, and we recorded the kick drum separately, and he'd overlay the other drums. In addition to being a wonderful natural player, he was really up for experimenting too.
He had a great ear. He was a really talented musician. I mean, he had a great ear. Love drummers. I can tell you my favorites, love drummers. Not every drummer has an amazing ear. Son, do you guys remember that? I mean, Son could be called upon up for anything. Just an amazing human being.
We did lose Son a while ago. We think about him all the time, especially putting the set together for the re-release and just hearing it all again, and how much everything, again, like just how it breathed with him in a different way.
And I have to say, my man, I'm a big fan of drummers who don't have like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So big respect for not even a floor tom. So that's awesome. But I just what are the sorts of things that people should be listening to that might be different from the original release on the re-release with between the demos and the final versions? I guess if there's anything that sticks out in your mind.
Gary?
I guess it's that, the demos are interesting because it is the sound of something coming together. And yeah, when I found the demo for Oceans in the Hall, I was just shocked at how complete it was. I think that was all Jeff playing all the guitars and instruments on that, and he just handed it to me one day, and I quickly wrote some words and played the trumpet over it. And then
it's one of the most beautiful songs ever written. I absolutely love that song.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really I wish Jeff was here to talk about how he came up with that a little bit more. But yeah, it's definitely a standout for sure.
Coming through the floor, oceans in the hall have become a port. The bay races further down, sea once so calm washes over the town. Seems your road is perfectly lit, your will has been mine, hands perfectly tied.
What was behind the decision to shorten 6 times? Because hearing the longer version in the bonus tracks was kind of amazing.
Yeah, I wish I could say, but maybe we thought it was a bit long at the time, and We probably would have done it in the mastering studio. And when at the end, after we had it mixed, we went to Sear Sound. Sear Sounds is a famous old studio that's still there. I think John Lennon made some records there, but they had a mastering room that was reasonably priced at the time. Fred Kevorkian was the mastering engineer. I think we probably made that decision then when we were sitting in the mastering room. And other things we had to do was we recorded some of the songs and we mixed some of the songs in pieces. We mixed the chorus and the verse sections and the middle section separately. So when we showed up in the mastering studio, we just had all these unassembled songs, and we had to have Fred cut them together because we had no digital technology at the time, and he was able to kind of digitally splice it all together, because our whole process back then was completely analog. You know, we were recording on 16 track and then usually mixing down onto 2-track stereo, reel to reel, occasionally a DAT machine. So I think some of those decisions we must have made when we were sitting up in Sear Sound. I'm pretty sure Jeff was probably fighting for it to fade out because he'd be more conscious of length and editing than any of us, I think.
And I'm definitely not saying that it was a bad decision. I haven't heard the longer version placed in there in the context of the rest of the album. The shorter version might make the album flow better.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of.
But it was fun to hear. I had forgotten about those little bits at the end because those reels were sitting on my shelf for literally 26 years until about 4 months ago when I put them up, and it was fun to hear that all the extra saxophone. Who was the name of the saxophone player, Jennifer?
Paula Henderson played sax on it.
Were you all writing out music? Is that something you did regularly? Was that just sort of like a one-off? You just happened to have that? I mean, it's just to me, just having played in bands and knowing bands and things like that. I know that just actually writing the music out isn't all that common. So I think it says something about all of you if you were. So
it's not like musical notation. It's just the chord.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, we did for some, like say, like Sasha was saying, if she wrote presented a song, sometimes we were getting ready in smaller groups, remember, or someone was traveling around, or we were each working on separate parts, and you were, sometimes, and then we would all come together and then add things to the recording session, or I not for every song, just I think that I like to do that when I'm working on demos. Yeah, I like to do it.
But I mean, we didn't actually write score the songs like that until we did. Maybe we had someone else that.
Yeah, the strings. I mean, Gary can talk about that.
The strings for the album were composed by Joe McGinty, who was a friend of ours in New York, and he's still around. I think we didn't hear any of the arrangements in advance, and he came in, and I think we had a trio that day. Yeah, 2 violins, or violin and viola and a cello. And we did strings on, I think 4 or 5 songs on the album have them. And he just wrote these magical counterpoints, things that we wouldn't have never conceived of. And I just remember hearing them for the first time and being really taken aback, because you suddenly have these lines painted over your music, and being a bit stunned and not sure what I thought of it at first, but then eventually like really embracing it. He was just such a wonderful resource to have. Getting the string players in there was a big step, a big evolution for us, and layering them a few times, throwing a little bit of reverb on them, and suddenly we just had this whole different color to our music. Couldn't believe that we were able to do that.
Yeah, no, he came through for you guys for sure. He did a fantastic job. It does. There's so much texture on the album. Were somebody playing fretless bass?
No,
I don't think so.
No?
Oh, you know what? I think I know what you're thinking of. It's the bass slide on 6 times.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is Jeff, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does that it's almost inspired by like a surf guitar run, that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the way it was recorded. Thinking back to a lot of the 60s and the Beach Boys and some of the studio, like we talked about, like listening to their work in the studio, I think impacted that kind of sound. Flat wound strings, yay! Just like bass, just like small drum kits behind the beat, flat wound strings always on the bass.
Listening to the record, yeah, it's good and great and all that and enjoyable. And I was just wondering, well, what's this stuff like live? And you guys pull it off. So kudos to you. I just wanted to kind of get some thoughts on what that was like adapting. I mean, because to me, it's just so foreign, like the kind of instrumentation that you're using. Or I'm just used to seeing, hey, guitar, maybe there's 2 guitars, a drummer, bass player, maybe there's a keyboard player or whatever.
Well,
you guys had all the instruments,
Yeah, to be honest, like it could be, we did so much instrument swapping in those days that it could be a real mess when we were playing live, and we'd have these awful pauses where people were running from one end of the stage to the other. We figured it out eventually, but I don't know, Sasha, what do you remember?
Yeah,
as far as trying to bring it live?
Yeah, I remember like the pauses feeling painful, but I feel like we got it dialed in. I feel like I was doing, I had a lot of percussion dangling from my mic stand. Like I feel like I had a lot going on over in my corner of the stage.
Right, because Sasha, you were always multitasking between
Yeah,
flute and your keyboards, and I
right. The
think live
triangle and the
back then,
melodica and the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes we didn't even have like an electric piano, and you were playing all Farfisa.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you definitely.
Yeah, ton of Farfisa. Yeah, we used to lug around the giant Farfisa on tour. But yeah, and I've always wondered, like, those pauses felt like completely painful to us during the live show, but like it might have been entertaining from an audience perspective. I don't I wonder.
I bet it was.
But what
Yeah.
if we were on tour, like, that tour we did right after we did with Montreal back then in '99, and we definitely draft them in for a few cameos to help us out with the extra bits that we couldn't all do, like either if it was singing or a little bit of bass. I remember Derek
one of the
Olmsted.
perks of being involved in Elephant Six is if you're touring with another Elephant Six band, they can jump in at any time and help out.
Yeah, they'll put you to work.
Yep.
It's nice. It really works well with the swimmer video that we just premiered that our dear friend Peter Spear put together from
Very cool video.
Thanks from the tour footage of that era, but it works so well because Derek would play bass on it because Jeff would play piano and I would play guitar and Sasha would play piano.
That's Derek Olmsted, who
Derek
was playing.
Yeah, and he just put out a album as Giant Day with Emily Groudon.
Yeah, and
the good news is he is playing drums with us currently. On the next tour we're doing in December. Yeah,
that's what I was getting at. So it's nice to have him in that video because he drummed with us on our mini tour in November of 2023, and he's drumming with us on the upcoming tour.
Yeah, that is one of the most constantly working musicians I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's a busy man. He does all sorts of things.
He's a real handyman. When we were rehearsing for the last tour, he just took a whole evening and helped us like get all the keyboard sounds we needed for the tour. He was kind of lightly tour managing us too.
Wow.
But he's definitely a resourceful guy.
He is an amazing.
He also he helped us with mastering all the bonus tracks too on the new set.
Wow.
Yeah, he made us on our last tour. He made us number every piece of luggage that went into the van, like put a piece of tape on it, and then have a clipboard with the corresponding numbers.
I can see him walking around with a clipboard, just staring at you.
We played along, but I mean that system didn't.
I just saw him. He was just visiting here with Giant Day. They played in Brooklyn, but
do they number their gear?
He's so busy that he filled in for the Garment District for our Northside Music Festival appearance last month completely at last minute. And he was up for it like 3 days beforehand.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. It was incredible. And he was already really familiar with the album, but yeah, it's like we have a lot of preciseness sometimes to our music, but we don't take it to every single corner of our being. But we had our yellow duct tape for our system on that tour.
Well, put in a good word to Derek for me because I'm going to want to do a Giant Day episode at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Just going back to that, kicking myself for kind of sleeping on this for 25 years, letting that ex of mine get the better of me and not bothering to go out and get another copy of the album. Thank you.
I think that I think we love hearing. It's refreshing to us being so inside it to hear from someone who wasn't listening to it a lot back then.
Yeah, it's true. It's a fresh perspective.
Thank you, and you're welcome, or whatever. Anyway, it all feels good, and that seems to be a commonality with a lot of the Elephant Six affiliated artists, is that there's a feel good. I think your songs tend to delve in sort of a wide array of emotions and moods and things like that, but it's all done with sort of an overarching air of sort of, I don't want to say celebration, but of joy and happiness related to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was definitely a time of life where we were happy and relationships, and it was a really nice time, I think, for everybody in the band, in life, and
Yes.
just a really good age and just a really good vibe and the whole thing,
and just having the opportunity, being a young band and getting signed to Merge Records and just seizing that opportunity, because we didn't know how long it was going to last, so saying yes to every opportunity and where that led us to. And we were pretty good about reaching out to bands we liked and sending a postcard or a record in the mail and getting opportunity from that. I don't know, we had a little more nerve then and that drive, and I think we just really made the most of it at the time. And just lucky to have a lot of good people around us, from Bill Wells, who helped us, who engineered the record with us, and Mike Barrett, we had him around to do the graphic design for the record. Just all these people in our orbit who were able to contribute to it.
It all comes together. The design of the album was very intentional to be a part of the music as well. And in some ways, what Sasha was saying, I felt like we were kind of in our own world, though. We would tour, touring a lot. We had the opportunity to go abroad, and when we played the Bully Weekender with Bo and Sebastian, we met all these people from Sweden and Norway. That kick-started going to Scandinavia, which a lot of the other Elephant Six bands our friends were doing or starting to do. But I felt at times when we toured on the West Coast that people really embraced us. We were a New York, Brooklyn band, but we kind of in a way had to create our own little cocoon of in this house recording this music. And remember, things were you mailed things, you sent letters, you sent postcards, you sent things in the mail, you heard bands, you met bands for the very first time when you saw them play, right?
Yeah, and people would take a chance on things that they hadn't really heard back then, because it isn't like these days where you can preview anything you want,
I haven't done that in so long. I haven't gone to see a band that I didn't already know in 15 years.
Right. And back then you might just get a postcard of an announcement for a show, or read about what something sounds like in the Village Voice or a magazine, and just by that little blurb you might take a chance that might send you out there,
I'll never forget the first time we arrived in Athens, after talking to people on the phone, setting up shows, and meeting everyone for the first time, and just feeling this really intense bond. We only knew each other through our music, and we were really literally meeting in the flesh. And I think that can't be understated. It's not a nostalgic thing. It's not it's really direct. It's really a part of what that whole scene was about, and seeing live music, and things are really different. I think that for us, I know we're thrilled to be able to bring the music in a live setting to listeners returning to the album, or first time. We've had first time people listening to it, just finding out about it, or like you were saying, Rudy, it was in your orbit, but you just, for whatever reason, that happens, you have gaps and you didn't listen to it at the time. And that's really important to us.
Don't Bother Wearing Seatbelts will be back in 2 weeks with an all-new episode. It's a conversation with Tammy Elom of Dressy Bessie about her solo project, The Tammy Shine, and her new release, OK Shine OK.
Every time I see your picture, peeking through those crusty pages, these are familiar places, haven't seen your face in ages. Hasn't anyone simply loved you
Until then, keep in mind that Don't Bother Wearing Seatbelts is and always will be free, but joining our Patreon and pledging just $1 a month allows you to participate in our monthly giveaways and to help us keep the proverbial lights on. So, before we return with another episode, be sure to listen to great music as well as do what brings you joy and fulfillment.
I don't find this shit amusing.